Alderman, and like Alderman Hadden, we have all really been on a roller coaster for the last year and a half as folks' situations have become more and more desperate. I'm grateful to IHDA for making this resource available to our constituents. Really looking forward to making sure that we have the ability to help them navigate as well. I know that I would be remiss if I didn't say that I know Senator Simmons was looking forward to being here. This time of year, we're in the last few days of the legislative session, and it's very, very unpredictable. He's in a hearing right now, so I want to give him a shout out and let all of our constituents know that the three of us are working hand in hand together to make sure that we navigate this together and get through it together. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Representative. And so this is a great example of government working for people, right? Just doing all of this collaboration is really inspiring and allowing us this time to get the word out for people. So Brendan, if we can go ahead and start sharing our screen, I'd like to present on the Illinois Rental Payment Program. Next slide. Today, what we're going to talk about is just share information about the program, give a step-by-step walkthrough of the application, and then talk about our communication tools that we have. Next slide. As IHDA has been tasked with administering over $500 million from the Consolidated Appropriation Act of 2021. This is in hopes to prevent the eviction of thousands of tenants that have been unable to pay their rent due to COVID-19. And it also will help prevent housing providers from going into foreclosure on their rental properties. Our program launched excitingly last Monday, May 17th, and our applications have started to come in by the thousands. So we're really excited that the word is out there and that people have this resource to apply. Next slide. The Illinois Rental Payment Program and their terms and timeline are as follows. We are going to pay up to 12 months of arrearage and 3 months prospective rent, which means we will pay a total of 15 months of rent, that with a maximum grant amount of $25,000 per unit. This is per tenant, not per housing provider. The coverage period is June 2020 through August of 2021. Assistance is paid directly to the housing providers. And as I stated, our application portal was open last Monday, May 17th, and will be open through June 6th. We are going to give an extra week for tenants to start their to complete their portion of the application on June 30th. We are expecting approvals to happen and payouts to happen late spring of next year. Next slide. So with assistance being paid directly to housing providers must waive all late fees and penalties associated with the pass-through rent, and they may not engage or initiate in any sort of eviction proceedings due to the pass-through rent coverage period. Like I said, $25,000 per tenant paid directly to the housing provider. Next slide. So who is eligible? The Treasury is very clear on this. Households that have experienced a loss of income, incurred significant cost, or a reduction of income, or experienced a financial hardship due to COVID-19. Those are the eligible applicants for this program. Households that are also behind on their rent, at risk of experiencing homelessness, or have housing instability, and households with an annual income of below 80% of the area median income. Tenants must live in their unit in order to apply, and proof of citizenship is not required for this program. This is not a public charge benefit. We are not asking for proof of citizenship for anyone applying for this program. Next slide. How does it work? Well, as I stated, housing providers will initiate an application and the tenant will certify the application. Grant payments this time around are based on need, and then prioritization is given to those that are below 50% area median income or who have been unemployed for 90 days. A great thing about our program this time is that applicants can track their application at this website right here on your screen. Next slide. So the application process starts with the landlord. They will visit ILRPP.ida.org to begin the application. This is the first section. Housing providers will input information about themselves, input information about the tenant, and in 24 hours, once they have submitted this part of the program, they will receive a link to the next part of the program. Next slide. And we have developed a video to show you exactly how this works for section 1.
Hello, in this video, I will be showing you how to apply for the Illinois Rental Payment Program, also known as ILRPP. Before you begin your application, talk with your tenant and make sure you both have active and easy access to email accounts. You must have those email accounts in order to apply for this program. To begin your application, visit ilrpp.ihda.org. Here you will see general information about the program and a link to frequently asked questions, as well as a link to our list of housing stability partners. To continue, click on the links to IHDA's e-consent policy and privacy policy and read them, and then check these boxes to agree to those policies and agree to provide truthful, accurate, and complete information. Once you click Next, you will be prompted to enter your name and email address, followed by tenant information such as name, email, rental unit address, lease information, previous COVID-19 assistance, and the amounts of rent past due for each month. The total fields will automatically get calculated as you enter your information. If you are a housing stability service provider, it is important that you check this box and enter your code for every application that you provide assistance for. This code will be provided only to housing stability service providers by IHDA. Once you click Submit, you have completed section 1 of the application.
So a couple things to point out in the in this section is that that application can be in Spanish if you select the language, and there are just different points to make sure to answer. Is one of the highlights is, have you received assistance for 2020? And if you have received assistance for 2020, you are still eligible to apply for this program. You're just not eligible to receive any sort of assistance for 2020. The assistance will begin January 2021 and on. Now, section 2. In section 2 of the application, the housing provider will upload proof of ownership, property management agreement if it's applicable, and Social Security or ITIN for the housing provider only, and then current signed lease if it's available. Lastly, there will be asked for proof of past due rent, and that rent proof can be a variation of eviction notice, 5-day notice, or some sort of rent ledger or rent roll. The tenant, once the landlord finishes this part of the application, hits submit, the tenant will receive their final portion in 24 hours. Next slide. So with that, I will show you a video on our application for section 2.
To begin section 2 of the application, you will need to check your email inbox for an email from DocuSign. The email will be sent within 24 hours of submitting section 1. Please be sure to check your spam and junk folders in case a DocuSign email was routed there. To enter the application, simply click on Review Documents located at the top of the email, and then click Continue. DocuSign features include yellow tabs on the side that will help guide you through the application, and tooltips that will inform you of what's optional and what's required. There's also a thumbnails feature that will allow you to jump to various pages of the application in a single click. Please take note of the application ID located at the top of the page and save it. This ID can be used later to reference your application status. IHDA will also be sending you an email with this ID. As you navigate through the page, you will see red boxes and red radio buttons. This is where you will need to provide information. And as you provide that information, red paper clips will appear on the page. This is where you need to upload documents. To upload a document, simply click on the paperclip and click on Upload a File. Please note that you will be able to upload multiple files on a single paperclip. For example, if each page of a lease is a separate image file, each file can be uploaded in this location. Once you've uploaded your files, you can click Done. If you would like to finish your application at a later time, go to Other Actions and select Finish Later. To get back to the application, simply go back to your email and click on the Review Documents link. Please note that DocuSign will send you an email regularly until you finish and submit your application. After you have completed your application, you must click the Finish button in order to submit. Please be sure to review your information carefully before submitting. You will not be able to make changes once it has been submitted. After you click Finish, you have completed Section 2, and your tenant will receive an email within 24 hours with instructions to complete Section 3.
A couple of things to point out on that application is that it is user-friendly. The navigation bar will take you directly to the fields that you need to complete. Also, if you notice, that application is in both English and Spanish. No one has to go to a separate URL this time. The housing provider would have submitted proof of ownership, which could be a tax bill or mortgage statement, a deed, or some sort of printout from a county website. They would have uploaded a current signed lease if it's available. If there is not a current lease available, it does not prohibit you from applying for these funds or getting approved for the assistance. Also, a fully executed property management agreement if it's applicable. If we are paying the property management company, we will need a fully executed agreement. Lastly, the written documentation of pass-through rent is very important. Notice of pass-through rent, 5-day notice, 30-day notice, eviction notice, or other written forms of written notice needs to have the tenant's name, address, unit number, and the pass-through rent amount and number of months. Next slide. So now Section 3, the final section. The tenant, now that the housing provider has completed their portion, the tenant will receive a link to start their, to certify their part of the application. In this application, the government, they will upload a government issue ID, proof of address, evidence of income, and some sort of proof of public assistance such as SNAP or TANF that will speed up the process of the application. Next slide. And with that, we have our final video to show you how this works.
To begin Section 3 of the application, your tenant will need to check their email inbox for an email from DocuSign. The email will be sent within 24 hours after you have submitted Section 2. Please be sure to communicate with your tenant and make them aware that you began the application process and that they should check their email for access to Section 3. To access Section 3 of the application, your tenant will simply need to click on Review Documents from their email, and then click Continue. The process to complete Section 3 is the same as Section 2. However, there are some additional links embedded into the application to provide guidance to the tenant on the required documents. For example, under the Identity Verification section, there is a link for acceptable forms of ID. Under the Address Verification section, there is a link for acceptable forms of proof of address. Additional links are available for income limits, evidence of income, and the income attestation. Once the tenant completes their portion, they must click Finish to submit the application. An application will not be considered complete until both parties have submitted their information. All applications must be submitted before the deadline to be considered for assistance. Once your tenant has submitted their portion, your ILRPP application will be eligible for review.
A couple items to point out in the tenant part of the application. It is exactly the same as the landlord or housing provider application. The navigation bar will help them complete the application. It would also take them to the acceptable forms of documentation that we would accept for all the items that the tenant needs to submit. For example, government issue ID. This is what they need to submit in order to apply. And this can be any government issue ID, a foreign passport, It could be a driver's license, state ID, matricula consular, a TVDL, which is not an ID, but IDA will accept it as an ID, and any form of identification, regardless of the expiration date. We do need proof of address. This could be a utility bill, a cell phone bill, a school enrollment, anything from a third party. Evidence of SNAP or TANF will help you speed up the process of the application, but that will be an award letter. So that's going to mean that we need an award letter with those details in them. Lastly, proof of income. Proof of income can be a 2020 IRS Form 1040. It could be wage statements, pay stubs, W-2s, a letter from an employer, or even our income attestation letter. Next slide. The income attestation letter is a letter that you can generate from our website, and you print this letter out and complete it. We at IDA understand that there are communities, individuals that receive cash income or don't have qualifying income or even some sort of proof of income. If someone prints out this form completes it, you can submit this form as evidence of income and we would accept it. This form is also available with the Housing Stability Service Providers. Next slide. Speaking of the Housing Stability Service Providers, we have enlisted 64 nonprofit agencies that include housing counselors, community-based organizations, legal aid organizations to assist with this process. They are covering 102 counties, which means they're covering the entire state of Illinois. 80% of these agencies offer Spanish-speaking services, and all of them combined offer 12 different languages, including American Sign Language, and they will provide intentional outreach and intake assistance, not only to tenants, but also to those smaller landlords. And they will have their own codes that they will use to track their applications. Next slide. The expectations are for these agencies to promote the ILRPP program with their community members, housing providers, advocates, and those trusted relationships that they have built, to provide that intake assistance to the smaller landlords, as well as providing assistance to the tenants. Next slide. Housing Stability Service Providers also will assist navigating through those difficult conversations in which landlords and tenants may not be having. We understand in today's environment, tensions are high, relationships are strained, landlords and tenants are not communicating. And Housing Stability Service Providers can navigate through those difficult conversations by explaining the benefits of this program for both parties. How the housing provider can recapture most, if not all, of the pass-through rent, and for tenants to explain how to avoid eviction and how having an eviction on the record may impact their future housing. Next slide. Our key messaging is that a submitted application does not guarantee assistance. It is critical to communicate with applicants that not everybody is eligible for this program. But if you are eligible, to apply within the 3-week portal time, with the 3-week time period that we have open through June 6, 2021. If a housing provider refuses to answer our email or does not initiate an application, tenants will have the opportunity to apply for this assistance on their own in June as well. More to come on that date, and we will explain the process for that in the coming weeks. Lastly, Housing Stability Service Providers will assist with the intake application, and important to capture your application ID so you could track the status of your application. Next slide. We also have a call center. We realize that some folks may not have email, so you can call us at 866-IL-HELP-1. You will have a live person Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. There is someone answering the phones as we speak. We offer multiple languages, including Spanish and Polish, and there's a special tree prompt for the Housing Stability Service agencies in case they need some assistance immediately. This call center is equipped to answer questions about the application and the process. Every person answering this phone has been trained in our portal and was part of the testing for this portal. So they are equipped to answer all of the questions. Next slide. Our communication plan is centered in 3 pillars. The call center, which I explained, and how I explained it was very important for each representative to understand the system. We want to minimize the transfer component. Then the housing stability servicers, trusted organizations who will provide the service to both landlords and tenants in assisting in applying for these funds. And lastly, we do have an email that we're answering live, questions.ilrpp@ida.org. We will be answering any questions that you may have regarding the program. With that, I'm going to pause and say that I'd like to take my hat off to all of my colleagues at the Illinois Housing Development Authority who have worked so hard over the past 6 months in designing and implementing a program that was going to create housing stability for thousands of people across the state. Director Faust is hoping that this will address the looming eviction crisis that we're seeing, and we appreciate everyone on this call, their collaboration and partnership to spread this word to ensure that this program gets out to those that need it. Thank you.
I have a question. Would the city's city key ID be an acceptable form of ID for this application?
Excellent question, Leslie, and I cannot believe that I missed that, because in every webinar I say it. Of course, the city key ID is definitely an acceptable form of identification.
Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation, Rodrigo. We really appreciate it. This is a separate program, but I did want to ask, is there an estimated time frame of the mortgage assistance launching?
It's another one of the big popular questions, right? We are early in discussions and design mode of the program. It is coming. It's hard to say exactly when, but we are in the phase of designing that program.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I don't have anything in the chat box, Rodrigo, so.
Well, hopefully this presentation was informative, and I'm hoping that we're able to share this with your constituents to get this word out. We have until June 6th, and we're more than happy to talk also about the tenant assistance as soon as we roll it out.
Thanks for making the time to be here tonight.
Thank you all. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Take care, everyone.
Thank you. Have a nice evening.
Bye.